This is News Conference Extra with Conan Nolan.
Good morning and welcome to News Conference Extra, a special segment of Today in LA Weekend. Joining us from Washington is Chuck Todd, host of Meet the Press, which airs every Sunday morning here at 8 o'clock. So, Chuck, before we get into politics, let me ask you something about football. Your Miami Dolphins have said they're not coming out Sunday for the national anthem. We noticed that the numbers on the opening game, Kansas City, were down. So as the football season starts, are we once again seeing the cultural dispute, the cultural element to this campaign starting to boil back up? And that's something that perhaps this administration and this president will try to take advantage of.
It's possible. I mean, if you recall 4 years ago, the NFL certainly made that analysis. That was the first time they saw their ratings start to dip. And there was a lot of questions. Was it due to the violence of the game? Maybe younger people weren't as interested. And they concluded that it was the polarization, the politics of sort of the moment that did it. And then when the politics de-escalated, their numbers went back up. And then here we are, the politics has escalated again. But I would caution assuming that this is a political response, that somehow there are fans turned off by the political responses of the sports figures. I think there's just as many fans. I mean, I understand this feeling. I feel that way. You don't have the same enthusiasm for football season without fans. You don't have the same enthusiasm for a lot of things right now during this pandemic. And so I wouldn't rule out the pandemic itself being a wet blanket on interest in sports. Ratings in general for sports have been lower than a lot of people expected, and I think you can't rule out the pandemic being responsible as well.
I had somebody ask me the other day, why did Donald Trump give the interview to Bob Woodward? And obviously, from what we know, members of his staff, even apparently his son-in-law, said don't do it, but he can't help himself.
It's ego. It always is. He sees Bob Woodward as one of the guardians of the establishment, and that if he can get in good with Woodward, then there you go. It's no different than trying to get in good with the Page Six people back in the 80s when he was a gossip guy, getting in good with casino regulators in New Jersey in order to make Atlantic City work. I mean, this is sort of in the president's MO, but he's also in defense of this president. He's not the only president that said, oh, I can handle Woodward. There's presidents have huge egos, or else they wouldn't have run for president, right? They all think once they've won the presidency, just get me in a room one-on-one with anybody, and they can talk. I mean, Bill Clinton was another one who thought, oh, I can handle Woodward. And, so some of this is sort of presidential hubris.
Let's talk about the Republican campaign. What are you hearing about the financial solvency on TrumpPence? The fact is that they pulled out on television ads in some key states. Apparently the base or some of the donors are wondering, why am I seeing all these Biden ads all the time, but nothing from the president? Is there something, the White House or the campaign says, no, we're flush with cash, we're going to be okay, but the president says he'll loan the campaign or he'll spend some of his own money. What's happening?
Look, they do have a cash shortage, and the question is, and it appears the reason they have a cash shortage is they assumed better fundraising than they've gotten. And so, look, a lot of this we're not going to be able to prove until you're able to put all these reports together after the action. But let me remind you of something here, and this is why I think they have a money problem, Conan. They opened their presidential campaign basically the day that he was inaugurated. They've been raising money from people both in small dollars and high dollar amounts since then. But you're still limited in how much you can give per presidential election cycle. I think they've been raising money so long, they've had too many donors who are maxed out, who have already given the legal limit that they can't go back to again. Joe Biden, of course, hasn't been running for 4 years. He's basically doing 4 years of fundraising that Trump did in a 9-month period, and has some enthusiasm behind him to boot when it comes to at least the anti-Trump enthusiasm. So I think they have a donor problem. That's their problem. They don't have enough donors left to fund what they need because their donors, they can't find enough new donors, and those that they can rely on may have already hit their legal limit. And that's why I think they have misjudged how much money they're going to have here in the last 6 weeks.
Right, but does that mean that the campaign has burned through all that money, for the past 4 years while the president's been the incumbent?
Oh. Well, and not only that, it's what they chose to spend the money on. Brad Parscale's goal was to acquire more donors and perhaps more voters. So every dollar that came into the campaign got reinvested into fundraising acquisition and donor acquisition. What do I mean by that? Spending more. Most of the Facebook advertising is advertising that's geared toward raising money. It's not advertising that's geared toward persuasive message. And so they've spent about half of their money on trying to raise more money. And fundraising that way is very expensive. The fact that the president refuses to do virtual fundraisers, but by the way, and they're just they're running out of cash.
Very quickly, who's on the program?
Well, we're going to ask that cash question to the head of the Republican National Committee, Ronna Romney McDaniel. So she's apparently one of the folks that's pretty concerned about this. Plus, we're going to dig deep into the Russia interference with Peter Strzok, the former lead FBI agent on counterintelligence.
NBC4's News.